Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I am joined by Stoney.
Hello.
How you been?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing really well.
Looks like we dodged a little bullet, didn't
Yes.
it? That cold front came down perfectly for us, but miserably for Florida, huh?
Right. I was just going to say, it feels kind of funny to talk about these like surface level conversations at the start of the show.
Right.
Because I think it's kind of funny. Like, I normally don't like the kind of surface level conversation that comes about, like that whole like, how's the weather? Like, I just sometimes I'm like, I sometimes I like deeper conversation better than that, and I don't want to involve all of it. But I think it's funny that, of course, the past couple of times we always talk. We start the episodes off light, and then we get deep, and I think that's really interesting. Yeah. And so I was going to start off again, being like, man, the weather has persisted. I know we were talking about this last week about how like it may not last, it may, et cetera, or we may get a hurricane or all that kind of stuff. The weather has been so beautiful. Yes. I went to a wedding over the past week, and it was an outside wedding, and I was really nervous.
Weather for that.
I was really nervous it was going to be like super hot and kind of unbearable, because I also wanted to look nice, so I wore, a button-up shirt with a tie and a coat, and it was nice. Okay. But I was, but man, I was so nervous because I was like, I want to look nice, but also I don't want to be out there in 80-degree weather. And it wasn't. It was so nice.
Well, we dodged a bullet here.
Yes.
And Florida did not.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting watching the media. So here we go. I'm going to go deeper on you
here.
I'm going to throw this one your way.
Walking down
watching the media say storm of the century, how horrible it is for the Floridians and where it is. Right. But they forget a year ago, Ida came through and completely destroyed the southwest part of Louisiana.
Yep.
Katrina was a few years ago and completely destroyed the southeast part of Louisiana.
Right.
And it's like they just want to sensationalize what is happening right now at this time.
Right.
Remember a couple of years ago, one of those winged off of Florida and came up and hit New York, and that was the storm of the century because New Yorkers had never really done that.
Right.
And we just need to pray for everybody. We have some friends that are heading down to Florida, or they're actually right now as we're recording, and they're trying to help.
Yep.
They brought 2 truckloads of supplies to help out.
I actually believe, at least the people that I think we're talking about the same people here. They whenever the last big hurricane came through for us, they came to support us.
Right.
In our time of need, and then now we are kind of getting the chance to return the favor to them.
You know what's funny, and I find this oddly humorous, and maybe this is just my humor, but hear me out. Hear me out. When you look at the news media, you don't see any Priuses and Teslas going down there to help out in Florida, but you sure see a lot of gas-guzzling trucks and rednecks and country boys and, salt of the earth people leaving everything that they have here to run down there and help everybody in Florida, because that's just the way we do things.
Right. Well, I think it kind of plays into that a little bit of what I touched on, I think, last week as well, is sometimes these natural disasters or just calamity in general brings out the best and worst in people. I feel like, and
that was a really good point.
It really shows. I've been saying that for a minute. Like, even as a young teenager, I felt that way. No one had to tell me that. I remember seeing it myself and going, this really does. It really amplifies these like different sides of the same coin kind of feeling, and that's kind of persisted even till today. And that's a great example of that. Of just, things happen, and you can do your best to prepare, but in the end, there's nothing like just having people there to help out whenever to pick up the pieces.
Absolutely.
So easy, or what is it? More hands make light work. Is that what this is? So,
hey.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about this show that we do, and I really wish people could hear, and maybe that's something we'll talk about in the future, is recording the pre-show and the post-show.
Yeah.
And offering that up for people. But one of the things that we've even mentioned it on the air a little bit is your relationship with your parents. Their relationship may have parted at one time, but you've kept a really great relationship with both your parents.
Yeah.
And some of the things that they've taught you and prepared you for life. And it kind of made me self-reflect on maybe some of the things my mom kind of taught me, but I was kind of disowned really early on. Right. And a lot of the things that my dad didn't teach me. Early, we've talked about it a couple of times. I love to cook. I love, barbecuing and smoking meats and things like that.
Right.
I remember back when I was, a young kid wanting to learn that. The only thing he taught me was how to clean the coals out of the bottom of the barbecue pit because he didn't want to do it.
Okay.
But he didn't really teach me anything about cooking the meat and the temperatures and the spices and things like that. I had to learn that later on in life.
Yeah.
Is there anything that stands out for you about what your parents or uncles or aunties or cousins or just people, maybe a neighbor that has taught you that has kind of served you well through life? My dad didn't even teach me how to change the oil.
Okay.
He didn't. There was nothing.
Right. There, for me, there are numerous things, but the one that I feel like, is like the first one that comes to my head, and I probably will elaborate upon more, is the ability to troubleshoot a problem.
Okay.
I think a lot of that is, I was kind of put in front of a computer at like a young age. Having limited knowledge of how some of that stuff works. So I had the curiosity of like trying to figure it out, as well as like being taught certain things by my dad and my mom as well. And I think with that was like just having the freedom to be able to like sit down and just like figure it out. I was taught a lot of great things, especially my mom being my teacher for a long time. She was very good at teaching me like the fundamental things of, reading, writing, and arithmetic and all that stuff. But there's this other element of like when I was a kid, a great example is I used to love Legos. Legos were just a passion of mine, as many probably 5 through 10 or year old kids are kind of. And there was so many times where my grandparents had bought me some, my parents had bought me some, and I was just handed this, for lack of a better term, like puzzle almost, with like a little instruction booklet. It was like, just figure it out. And I was like, oh, cool. And I was already kind of I feel like I think my personality type is one to kind of like be tinkery and likes to kind of figure out how something works.
Right.
So to have this like booklet that's going to, or have a picture of this item and have all these pieces and you're supposed to just figure it out is like, oh, that was the best.
So you were taught how to almost improvise and kind of make something happen.
Right. Or to be able to look at instructions in some capacity and having no words and just looking at pictures and having an understanding of like the pieces themselves, like be able to build something. And of course you have this finished product and it's like, I made that. I did that. And I think that some of that carries over into like my career life now.
Okay.
That I think I personally got I don't want to say praised, but I someone had mentioned to me, I was helping this elderly lady out. She was having a hard time getting videos from her iPad to her computer. It was a whole situation.
Okay.
And to be honest, I didn't quite know what to do either, but like I know that I had the patience to figure it out, and I knew that given enough time, I can make this work. that was one thing that she had really had praised me for. She was like, I'm surprised at just the patience you have to just deal with this, because she's like, I try to get through this and I kind of get frustrated. I don't know what to do and I feel like I'm lost. But it just seems like every time she was sitting there, and she wasn't like overbearing, like over my shoulder, but she was sitting next to me, like just curious about how I was going to fix this situation, and I was okay with it. And she was like, I'm surprised every time it looks like you hit a roadblock where I feel like I would give up, you just keep finding a new way to get to where we need to be. And I'm just surprised. And I was like, well, I appreciate that, because that's what I feel like I do pretty well at in my day-to-day life.
Right.
And in many other situations, it's like, you just got to be patient sometimes if you want to get something done, you just got to be patient and got to figure it out. You just got to really figure it out. That's just the best way to put it.
So when you were growing up and your mom and dad were teaching you these things, were you a typical kid that kind of resented the authority showing you how to do something, or were you more receptive to that? Do you remember?
I don't remember personally, but I'm from stories that I've heard from my mom and from, I know, like, my personality that's persisted throughout my life. I always kind of liked the structure of authority.
Okay.
And I mean, there was times whenever I was like really young, like 2-3 years old, where like my mom has told me many stories of like how I was like really rebellious, and then she lit a fire underneath my ass, and then of course that changed real quick. It changed real quick. But I don't think I remember ever being super rebellious towards my parents, because I was also like a pretty calm kid anyways. So like I don't think it took a whole lot for my parents just to go like, don't do that, or would point me in a different direction, and I'd be like, okay, cool, yeah. And so but now in my adult life, one thing I can say is that like I hold like hierarchy, like the chain of command, if you will.
Sure.
I hold that to such a high regard. Sometimes it's like kind of gotten me in some trouble, because I look at that very strictly.
Okay.
Because
almost rigidly, though.
Right. I have worked in corporate businesses before where there's like usually a general manager, some sort of middle management, or a departmental manager, and there's like a supervisor, and then yourself. Or there's a hierarchy of things. Sometimes, again, it's not so strict as like maybe the military, for instance, but like, you're supposed to kind of follow the chain. If you got a problem, you can go to your direct superior or even above them if they can't fix the situation, and of course resolve a problem. And I have looked to that, and it has done me well. I know people probably don't like that. It's just something that I think it's just the structure, and it's the organization that my personality really appreciates. And the part where it's gotten me in trouble is a lot of times when people, like when I have some level of authority, and then people that I'm supposed to be over in some capacity try to then not ask nicely, but then command me to do something. And I'm like, okay, that's not how this works. and then that's where my, I don't want to say pride, but I think there is a level of that as well, where it's like, there's a way in which things happen. And if a, let's say, subordinate in some way was to say like, hey, Ian, could you do this? Or could you help me with this? Whatever. I'm totally on board with that. Sometimes it was hard for me whenever I was getting like orders barked at me, and I was like, technically I'm getting paid more to do that to you right now, but I'm not. I'm nice, and I'm going to be really, really cool with you because I don't want to do that anyways. But at the same time, that doesn't give you the right to do that to me because I'm being nice to you. Right. And maybe a little bit of a pushover. So that was that was one thing I realized. But never with my parents. Whenever I went to that like teenage years of my life, I would just like shut my door and listen to music or play music and just kind of be on my own. It's like, I just want to be by myself, and it was just kind of, I never really got angry with my parents. I think I got angry with my parents, but never took it out on them. I always had somewhere else to go and go like, oh my gosh, my parents, whatever. So.
Well, I remember kind of growing up My dad was a racist. And that's really the only thing he wanted to teach me.
Gosh.
And I wasn't buying that.
So bad.
Okay. I didn't know what I wanted to be yet.
Right.
But I knew I didn't want to be that.
Of course.
And so that kind of propelled me on some of my life. He fancied himself a griller.
Okay.
And he would do, leg quarters.
All right.
And they were okay. But he never taught me how to do that kind of stuff.
Right.
I remember one time his parents were city folk and my mom's parents were country folk.
Okay.
And it was kind of cool to go to the weekends with either the city folk or the country folk. And it was Granny and Papa and Grandma and Papa.
Okay.
Grandma and Papa were the country folk and Granny and Papa were the city folk. Mm-hmm. And one time we were, I guess it was maybe a Saturday or Sunday after church or something. And Papa, my dad's father, said, "Why don't you come help me grill?"
Yeah.
So I was just into that. I was just ready. I wanted to learn how to do that and learn from somebody.
You know about how old you are?
Probably about 12 or 13 years old.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And I really wanted to.
Yeah.
And so he was showing me how he did it.
Right.
And it was kind of nice.
Right.
To spend time with somebody that wanted to teach you something.
Yeah.
And I remember he got this huge, big glass tray. And he said, "You hold that, and I'll take everything off the hot pit, and then we'll go inside and eat with the family." And I went, "Okay, that's awesome. Yes, sir." So I'm sitting there kind of holding the tray.
Right.
And he piles up all this chicken and steak and all the sausage.
Right.
And it's a nice pile. And he says, "All right, let's go on inside." And as I turned, everything slid off of the tray.
Oh, no.
And went onto the carport underneath the car. Poof, all over. And I looked at him like I thought he was my dad would have and just beat me into submission.
Right.
But he looked at me and just kind of smiled and shook his head and he says, "Come on." And he picked every piece up, kind of put it back on the tray and said, "Come on, let's go eat."
Oh, man.
And
wow.
I was really surprised. And the whole dinner, while everybody's eating all this food, him and I just look, and he would tilt his head up and he would just smile and don't worry about it. And it was a coaching point.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Things happen. Mm-hmm. Don't sweat it.
Right.
And keep pressing on.
Exactly.
And I guess another story I'd like to share is when you'd go to the country folk, Grandma and Grandpa, Pawpaw would wake us up at 4:00 in the morning.
Okay.
And he was always an early riser. In his younger days, he was a farmer. And then he went to work for an aluminum plant in the early days as a purchaser. And so he would wake us up at 4:00, and he would feed us all the coffee and sugar we wanted. And we would have a bowl or two of Product 19 cereal with 3 or 4 scoops of sugar on it.
Wow.
And you had coffee with Pawpaw.
Yeah.
It was just something that you did, and it was fun. And he had all these stories and things he wanted to pass on to you. And he was probably the king of dad jokes before dad jokes were a thing.
Right.
And he'd put us back in bed. And Grandma would wake up, cook us this big spread, and wonder why we were never hungry.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And so it was though the grandparents wanted to teach you and deal with that. Now, my mom and I subsequently just, redid our relationship.
Right.
And but my father and I never really recovered from that because I felt like he did not have anything to teach me that was worthwhile to learn, nor did he want to teach me anything.
Right.
And so it was after I moved out that I learned how to do just about everything in life. Work on cars, hunt, fish, cook.
Yeah.
Relate to people.
Yeah.
It was something that I had to learn from other people in my life and not my dad. And I kind of regret that. And so hearing you talk about your relationship with your mom and dad, and then there's some other people in and around your life that have helped you. It's just kind of neat to know that, when I'm dealing with Magnus and I'm trying to impress upon him that even though my dad didn't want to deal with me, I still love him. And I have all of this stuff that I want to impart to him because I have no one else to leave it to.
Right.
All this wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
and I just want him, and he's kind of a little rebellious and anti-authority on that.
Right.
And I'm not trying to do it as an authority figure. I just want to do it. Come on, dude.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to kind of be like me, I can help you be successful.
Right.
But if you want to be like your dad, I can't help you be successful in that because I don't do the things he does.
Yeah.
So if you want to be like him, then you need to rely on him for that success advice.
Right.
But if you want to be like me and hunt and fish and man stuff.
Right. Yeah. The stuff that you're good at. Yeah,
right. The stuff I'm good at. Now his dad's good at other stuff.
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah.
But
right.
That's what I'm trying to get him to understand.
One interesting thing, like hearing you talk about it and just thinking about the different sides of my parents' relationship, is I think I learned a lot from, I learned a lot of the tinkering and building side of things from my dad. Mm-hmm. And then the one interesting thing is because my mom was my school teacher, I was homeschooled for a majority of my education. And she homeschooled myself, my two younger brothers, and then give or take 20 to sometimes 40 kids at a time in our local area.
Okay.
It was, it is her full-time career, even to this day. But having my mom be my teacher, not only did she teach me like everything that I like, how I am able to function, I feel like as an adult, but also the ability, because of the circumstance that we were in, like the situation that we were in, she would, a lot of times the public school system or even private schools wouldn't really have a one-on-one reaction with kids a lot of times. And so they would kind of either fall through the cracks, or there was like bullying issues or learning impairments.
Right.
And that's where she thrived, was this kind of one-on-one context is the best way to put it. It is like, this kid is excelling in math, but can't read very well. And so she would challenge that kid in math and then like really fine tune how to get their reading up. And that's been the magic of her business for the better part of 20 years now. Mm-hmm. Is like taking these special scenarios and then making a kid into a functioning adult in society. And
that's amazing.
And doing that in a way that she's imparting love as well as education and all these other facets into it. I'm saying all this to say that I think I may have learned how to like fix and tinker on things from my dad and watching him and being with him all the time. But I feel like I have learned to be a good teacher of that from my mom, mm-hmm. to be able to understand a problem or a situation or a computer or whatever it may be, and then have somebody look at me and go, how do I fix this? And then I have to like relay that in the best way possible and then help them comprehend it in some way. And like just learning that from by observing my mom and how she works and how she's ran her business for 20 something years now, is I give her the credit for that, because there's been so many scenarios where I feel like even in the current career field that I'm in now, I feel like people are always very appreciative and always thanking me for being able to just relay this information to them as easy as possible. Or they have a problem and they like, I don't know how to fix it, or where do I start? And I'm like, it's totally cool. And just breaking it down, tinkering with it, figuring it out, and then relaying that information back to that person that may have no knowledge of this problem or have no even interest sometimes in how it works, but but they want to know what's wrong. Mm-hmm. And be able to have them comprehend it a lot of times is also very interesting.
One of the things we like to do here is we had X-Man here with us. And subsequently we've had a couple of guest hosts. And we're going to have some guest hosts coming up. I met somebody that I'm excited to have on the show. He's an audio guy too. Yeah. And I've asked him to be on the show. He's going to listen to a couple episodes and join us. We've had Sam. We've had Miranda, Hottie Doctor.
Yes. So great. All the great.
But this is a podcast about life. Yeah. That's what we talk about.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things that I get feedback from people is that they just like our conversation.
Yeah.
We don't always stay on one topic,
Right.
and it's hard.
Right.
But that's what life is. Life is a hodgepodge of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, maybe we try to pass on information and we ask for information from our listeners, and that dynamic goes back and forth. We get feedback, we give feedback back and forth. Maybe we could turn and ask your mom to be a guest host on the show.
Okay.
Maybe she could impart to people like me and our listeners who have challenging situations on how to inspire somebody, not always see the negative of this situation, but how can you bring the good out and inspire like Magnus to help him. Maybe you think she would be interested in that? Maybe we could reach out and touch base with her.
Yes, I know my mom listens to this show, so if you're listening, hello. But also, right. So I know that she has wanted to get on and talk about school stuff, education stuff, and throughout life and all that.
And we could talk about the generational part of that also, from what school was like for me to the differences of what it was like for you.
Oh, yeah.
And she could, be a bridge between that.
Right.
But maybe she can help inspire or teach us how to inspire people that really aren't challenging kids, but are challenging on you're really good at this, but not good at that. And that's Magnus to a T.
Well, and that was even myself. Like I was really good at, up until about like algebra, where it started getting really crazy. I was really good at math a lot of times, really good at arithmetic, and I loved learning like science based stuff, or history things a lot. But I was never great at like reading, and reading comprehension was just a weak spot, and that was hard for me. And there was ways my mom was able to kind of work some things out to make it to where, like, again, I'm much better at it now than I would have been. I feel like
I wonder how much technology hurts reading. I loved to read when I was Magnus's age. I read a couple of books, Call of the Wild, My Side of the Mountain.
Yeah.
Great books. And after the surgery, I have somewhat of a photographic memory.
Right.
And I wanted to judge or gauge if my memory had been affected by the surgery, because the tumor was in that area of the artery where you have a duplicate memory section on both sides of your head. I think that's how the surgeon explained it. And I was cloudy. Part of the cloudiness, I'm coming to find out, was the Keppra and the anti-seizure medicine and some other stuff that I'm subsequently off of.
Yeah.
But I read these books again to help me gauge any memory loss, maybe. Yeah. Remembering sentences and paragraphs and events in the books and things like that.
Right.
And it just brought back so many memories to read.
That's so
My
cool.
Side of the Mountain. It's about a young boy who doesn't necessarily run away from home, but he runs away to an idea.
Oh, wow.
And it's his grandfather's farm in the mountains.
Wow.
And he heard about this for years and years and years, and he just wanted to go there. And
That's cool.
He runs away, but he doesn't run away because his home life is just completely, miserable and he's being abused. He's running away to an idea. Mm-hmm. And then it's about the support, when his parents and everything and the people help him out. And,
that's cool.
And I bought a gorgeous hard copy of this.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, Magnus, please read this book. Please. It'll give us something we have in common. And it's a really great story about a young kid your age.
Yeah.
Who's just trying to find his way in life.
Right.
And I just want to inspire him. And I was hoping the energy of seeing me read and things like that would show him something.
Yeah.
And he finally started reading it, and he's in it, and he's actually enjoying it.
That's cool.
So I want to reach out and touch and inspire him.
Yeah.
like my father did not do for me.
Right.
And so just to see him read this book that I read when I was his age, is so amazing to me.
That's really cool.
I know it sounds kind of cornball. It's just a book, but it'll give us something in common.
Yeah.
Something we can talk about, something we've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think,
well, that was my point, was if all of this technology takes you away from reading, there's so much instant gratification.
Right.
Watch the movie.
Right.
Watch a video. Do something else other than take the time to read a book. And you know this, when you're reading a book, it's almost like you're building the story in your head.
Yeah.
And it's almost a digital story, and you build the mountain and you build the ship you build the whatever in your head. And the better it's written, the easier it is to build it in your head and pull you in and draw you into that. Right. Well, now all you got to do is turn on YouTube or, TikTok or whatever and watch a movie or watch a video, and there's no need for the story because it's instant gratification. It's right there in front of you.
Yeah, I think in some way that is the case. It makes it hard because I feel like I don't want to get too deep in the weeds with this, but I feel like a lot of that kind of stuff is killing creativity in a lot of ways.
Oh, I believe so.
But what I was going to say initially was I don't think it's corny to share something sentimental with someone that you're trying to impart that kind of that feeling into, or you're trying to encourage in some way. I can understand where you're coming from, but I wouldn't say that's corny at all to have this book that is sentimental to you and it means something to you, and to try and share that with him. That just sounds cool. To go on to like the building of a story, I'm only going to touch on this for just a little bit. Dylan, a really good friend of mine, he and I sat down and we started like improving a story, and we sat down and were intentional about being creative, and about like listing off an origin story for a character that we had in mind. And he and I spitballed ideas back and forth, and it took us probably like 2 hours. But by the time we were finished with it, we were both super excited, and we both felt so proud that we created this this character who the one thing I'll tell you about to help shed some light on this scenario is he is supposed to be a robot who doesn't have feelings, and doesn't comprehend feelings, but the person that created him imparted feelings into him by showing him this emotion of caring for you, this emotion for supporting you and being there for you and making sure that you are all right. And then inevitably, whenever that person is gone, this robot that's supposed to be without emotion now has this understanding of how to treat people in some capacity, even though he doesn't understand how that's supposed to happen, but he was taught it by being shown. Okay. So that's just a very, very, very summarized version of the story. And it's very touching and it's very emotional towards the end. But we started this origin story for this character and just started writing ideas and coming up with these really cool, just these story beats. And it was super cool to be creative with a friend of mine and to make something that we're both proud of, even though it may not be for everyone. And it's kind of it's a weird story, but it has these like human elements that like you wouldn't think would come from this kind of inhuman kind of thing. But anyways,
well, that exchange of knowledge and energy and things like that is kind of what this topic is about today that we're discussing is, imparting something, teaching something, learning something from somebody.
Right.
And it's so important in today. And I think we're losing that with technology, with the TikToks, with the Snapchats, with the things like that give you such instant gratification. you don't actually have to build anything in your head anymore.
Right.
We would go outside and play for hours when school was out. Mom would throw us out, put a cooler with ice outside, and say, go outside and play.
Yeah.
And we could only come in from 1 to 3 when it was the hottest part of the day.
Right.
But we were outside using our imagination.
Yeah.
And if maybe you said something about losing some creativity, but creativity stems from imagination.
I think, yes. The part that hurts me a lot is, and again, this is probably a whole topic in and of itself, and I'll just give you the Cliff Notes version, is I don't like that TikTok rewards you for doing the same thing over and over again.
Right. I agree.
And I don't like that it is conditioning people to also encourage people to do the same thing over and over again and to not do anything different, is to do this quick, fast action of something that's like, quote unquote, was probably creative at one point in time. It was fun and maybe even innovative or different. And then it is a platform that is like, it is really encouraging the users of it to then look at those creators and go, keep doing what you're doing, keep beating this dead horse until it stops shitting out money, is what it feels like.
I think that should be a subject. I think we can put this on the whiteboard, because
yes,
you know how I feel about social media.
Right.
Let's put that. I think that's a great thing we can discuss, because it's so instant gratification, but it's basically making you look at your life.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not so bad, because look at these idiots right here. But they're being successful and making money at it. Like you said, they're being rewarded for their stupidity, but no one is actually creating anything.
Right.
Chip Foose, a great custom car builder,
says
we're not teaching our kids to build anything anymore. We're just teaching them to go out and buy it.
Right.
So there's no creativity. There's nothing new happening.
Yeah.
And that's in stories and movies.
Yeah.
Because they're just doing it again with technology.
Yeah.
Pocahontas, Dances with Wolves, The Last Samurai, and Avatar. James Cameron won so many awards on Avatar. But all of these are the same story. Some military guy has to go for some reason, either gets captured or lives with the barbarian enemies and winds up fighting for them.
Right.
It's the same damn story every single time.
Right.
But we change a couple of little aspects of it.
Yeah.
And we're going to win awards. We're going to reward somebody for doing the same thing over and over and over and over again.
But I think there's a difference between, in the reference that I'm talking about, there's a difference between taking maybe taking a trope or a skeleton, like a backbone of something, as like a template to then add your own creativity to. Like for instance, The Last Samurai, as opposed to the Avatar. Those may be, history may repeat itself with people doing the same actions and the same story, but those two things will look and sound very different and are creatively very differently. And that's so. I mean, I feel like obviously everything has probably already been created and nothing is original. I'm not saying that like it has to be original, but the thing that hurts me is when an artist or a comedian or whomever it may be, in this context of like TikTok, for instance, could potentially make something. They may have made one funny thing, one great thing, and there's nothing wrong with them reprising that every now and then, because it could be funny again, or it could be interesting or creative again. But the part that hurts is when it's like, but you have to do that forever now. Like you can't be anything else except for that. And then it's like, from what I've heard of people in that kind of industry that create that kind of stuff, they feel that way because again,
typecast.
They anytime they try to divert from it, all of a sudden the views and the revenue goes down.
Right.
And that makes me so sad that like they, as an artist, feel like they can't do anything else except for be this one thing, because if they ever change from that, it's going to be detrimental to their career. And I feel like that hurts like a creative person, myself, being able to just like do whatever I wish and like create something, or like go, I'm good at this one thing, but let me go ahead and just like do it this other way and see if I like it. Sometimes it works and I'm like, oh, that was amazing. But then sometimes I'm like, no, you know what? Let me just stick to my guns and you know, do what I'm good at. Anyways, that's another topic. Another topic. Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. So again,
but it leads to people aren't teaching, they aren't learning, they aren't pushing on new things and challenging people to be independent and to learn things. And for me and Magnus, I just want to be able to do for him what my father didn't do for me.
Yeah.
Refused to do for me.
Right.
And it's interesting that finally he's starting to read that book. Right. And it makes me happy.
That's really cool.
I feel like I've imparted something to him.
Right.
And maybe we can build on that and continue to build on that.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a couple of life lessons that I can teach him.
I think we talked about this in a previous episode where you were talking about like being a stepfather in general. Right. I guess I'll just reiterate what I was saying then, because I still believe it now, is I think what's probably going to be the best for the next few years is just you being present and you just being there.
Right.
You being present, and then you being a constant is being there for him and keeping up with this kind of these morals, this personality, this mentor of some kind, is like that I think is probably going to be the most impactful thing. Is just this, no matter what, or in face of adversity, these are what I can count on kind of things. And he may be going through these like crazy years in his life where he's being rebellious or being a little shithead or whatever. But I don't want to speak for him, but for myself, I can say, after I had grown up a little bit and I was out on my own and doing my own thing, and had realized the teachings that I was imparted into, or that was imparted into me, and I had a chance to really stretch my legs and do my own thing, was then when I realized, wow, did I have great parents that really taught me a lot.
You understood what they were doing.
I understood what they were doing.
Sometimes it was painful.
Yeah.
But at one point you come down to understand what they were doing.
Right.
And I keep trying to tell him that.
Yeah.
One day you're going to understand.
One day you're going to understand.
Yeah. Because one of the lessons I'm trying to teach him right now is just because you become older or of age.
Right.
My job right now is to impart or teach you how to parent yourself when you get out on your own.
Yeah.
Because you're still parenting yourself now.
Yep.
I'm still parenting. I'm almost 60 and I still have to parent myself every day. I don't want to go to work, but I have to.
Exactly.
I don't want to go make my bed, but I need to. I don't want to have to clean, but I do.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to shower twice a day, but I do.
Right.
And those things is just so important that I had to learn a lot of that after I left.
Of course. So sometimes people may be very gracious to that, like, before they leave. For me, it was always a constant, and I think I appreciated it when I was in the midst of it. But like I had said, it really took me leaving, and it took me leaving the country for a while to really get out on my own and prove to myself that I could do it and not totally screw my life up, for me to then go, I am the person that I am today because of the people that raised me, whether that be my parents or other good mentors and role models in my life that I've had. Because I talk about them a lot, but the person that I consider my music mentor that taught me the most about music in general was also the person that taught me a lot about myself.
Right.
And that was hard a little bit, because I may not agree with everything that that he believes or that he imparted into me, but like there was a lot of stuff that he taught me about. He was the first person that told me. I was so scared about like graduating high school and thinking about going to college and being nervous about all this other stuff. And he was the person that looked at me honestly and was like, people come and go, opportunities come and go, but school's always there. And sometimes it's okay if you don't go right now.
Right.
And if you have an opportunity that you don't want to pass up, go ahead and take it, especially if it's going to potentially set you up for success in a career that you want to be a part of. And I needed to hear that. I feel like my parents had probably said that to me. Friends had probably told it to me. But to have somebody that I looked up to, not only because he was older than me, but he was also someone that has taught me a lot about music and about other passions that I enjoyed. And I was so just concerned and didn't know where to go at that time because it was such a big decision. So for him to tell me that and to feel that sincerity just put me at ease. And so I've talked about him a handful of times on the episode, and he's also told me a lot of other stuff about just life and music and everything, and just how to problem solve, but then also how to be creative, how to be diligent about like sticking with your instrument. You're not. I even take this quote from him as well. He's like, "I make it look easy, but that's not without like the work that I've put in to get here." Right. He still is a piano player, and he's been playing piano since he was 13. And I think last time I did any kind of real teaching with him, he was in his 40s. So like he obviously he knows his instrument. And I was a guitar player trying to be a bass player in a band that we were in. And he was like, you can't. Oh, what was it? It was basically like there's no substitute for just putting in time with your instrument,
right? And
just learning it. Because once you like learn it, once you're just comfortable around it, is when you can make it look easy. But until then, it's not. It does just come. I mean,
it's having someone that cares enough to talk about you and try to impart this stuff to you,
right?
And then you have to be willing to listen to them too.
Yes.
And I think that's what this episode is about. It's just if you can take the time to impart something and help somebody and talk to them and teach them, do it. And then if you find somebody like that in your life, be willing to listen.
X-Man's son currently is in a position with me where he's asking questions about the work that I'm doing.
Right.
And it's so interesting to me to have somebody that is like young and energetic and is just wanting to learn.
A sponge.
He wants to learn everything about it, almost to the point where he'll really pester me a little bit, which is, I think it's funny.
Right.
But he's teaching me a lot about my process at work. Like I may have like a checklist of things I want to get done and a way that I like certain things to be. But sometimes it takes a person like getting in there and going, but why do you do it that way? For you to like really think about it and then like put into words why you may do your routine, you know?
Challenge the process.
Yeah. And sometimes, and it's been really interesting to like reaffirm like why I do what I do in a way, because I know there's a method to the madness that I know sometimes people don't always understand, but it's nice for me to be able to like to articulate it and go, I do it this way because it makes the whole process easier, or it streamlines this, or,
right.
You know, whatever. And for him to go like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm like, it just reinforces like you know, your workflow, or sometimes it may put into question some flaws in how you do certain things.
Right.
Like, are you doing this because you'd been doing this for years, or are you doing this because of another reason? One thing that I thought was interesting was a coworker of mine had gone behind me and adjusted something and had adjusted it incorrectly from how I would like it to be done. And I walked on the scene, and he was like, "Hey, so this person came up here and started adjusting it this way." And I was like, "Okay, this is a great opportunity. We don't do it that way."
Right.
Because it can really mess the whole situation up. And I was able to like show him like, this is why we don't do it this way, but we do it this way because it's easier or it's more streamlined or because all kinds of other reasons. You can put, hopefully this story is not vague enough where you can't obviously understand what I'm talking about and put it into your own context as well, of like being able to think of a circumstance where somebody's like, "Oh, I just been doing it this way because somebody else has been doing it that way." It's like, well, that's not always the best way. Like, is that
just because we've done it 100 years doesn't mean it's the best way to do it.
Exactly. Sure. Yeah. Or, stuff like that as well. Or again, people think it's the correct way, and then in actuality it could be harming things or breaking stuff or that kind of thing. So anyways, it's interesting to be able to have somebody that is just showing that aspect of myself to people, that I can teach somebody something and impart wisdom, and as well as, tinker with him and figure out how to
That's awesome.
Things. Anyways, so.
Yeah. All right. You got anything else?
What I just want to make sure the original question that you had asked was, what did you ask me initially?
I don't even remember anymore.
I know we've gone off on a few rabbit trails.
Have to listen to the podcast.
I guess you're right. What I was just gonna say, I know you were talking about, like, you originally talked about the fact that, like, what you didn't learn from your parents and what I learned.
Well, it just basically was just that, and some of our conversations about what my dad didn't teach me and how lucky you were to have parents that participated.
Okay.
And what did you get from that?
Okay. I just wanted to be sure I had the question correct, and I wasn't trying to. We didn't go off the rails.
We chased a little rabbit, but that's okay.
That's good.
I don't mind chasing rabbits every once in a while.
Right. You are. What I will say to end the episode is you're right. I feel like not only have my parents been very pivotal to me, like learning and setting me up for success, but I don't necessarily think that that's the only way. I think there are circumstances and situations like yours where a person can come in later down the line or later in the timeline in some way and can really make a positive difference in somebody's life. Right. And I don't underestimate that. For anybody listening out there, if there's any young person out there, or if you have a young person in your life that is looking for somebody to be that rock, don't pass that up. I feel like, I don't know.
You never know what kind of difference you're going to make in somebody's life.
Yes, I can say that with full certainty now that, like, I am one part of many parts of shaping a young man's life.
Sure.
And I don't want to take that for granted. And I know that hopefully one day that he can tell stories and be proud of the things that he learned from me, just like I can be towards, like, my music mentor, for instance, that was no part of the family, was no part of any kind of he wasn't around in my childhood. I really started to look up to him in, like, my teenage years as a musician, and to be able to be that for somebody else is really encouraging to me. Cool. So,
okay.
Thanks.
All right.
What a good episode. I had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah.
But if you're looking to get involved, or you want to talk to us or give us ideas for the show, you can type in Retrospect Pod on Facebook, or you can type in linktree.com/Retrospect Pod as well. And you can look at all of our links there and find all the ways to listen to us or to reach out as well. But anyways, until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Peace.